Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Corombos of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Happy 4th of July week. It is Three Martini Lunch. Greg Corombos out this week. Chad Benson from The Chad Benson Show in for Greg. As always, Jim Garrity here. And we got your good, mostly good, and your crazy. And yes, I think even the first one's a little bit crazy. Let's start there, Jim, with the good. Biden's plan of attack is to stay president and then get out in front of the people more often.
Yes, Chad. By the way, it's a holiday week, but it is not a slow news week. The reason I argue this is the good martini is that the Biden campaign didn't have a lot of great options of how to respond to Thursday night's just absolute debacle of a performance on the debate stage and all the Democrats who are panicking and contending maybe Biden should not be the nominee. But I kind of feel like of all the possible ways you could respond to it, the very worst one is to come out and attack people who say that he's too old. And yet, apparently, that's what they're wanting to do. According to Bloomberg, quote, President Joe Biden's campaign is going on the attack against a chorus of donors, consultants, officials, and media voices calling on him to drop out of the 2024 race after his devastating debate performance. I love how the very next sentence in Bloomberg says, quote, the strategy will be remembered as a display of either remarkable foresight or incredible hubris. Chad, I'm going to take door number 2 because you can't ask people to unsee what they've seen, and you can't ask people to unhear what they've heard. And the thing is, they keep referring to bedwetters. I don't think this is bedwetting. I think Democratic panic is an absolutely rational response to what they saw on that debate stage, and the fact that everything else Biden does, he's reading from a teleprompter. He's not thinking on his feet. He's not doing hard interviews and things like that. It strikes me as no, this is where we should be. Like, that is an entirely rational response, and I don't think you can attack people into changing their mind and thinking, oh yeah, Joe Biden's doing fine.
You know, it's funny, Jim, because if this was Nikki Haley, would people be more honest? But because it's Donald Trump, they're more apt to lose their mind because they think this is the only guy that could beat Trump. And, you know, oddly enough, based on the numbers and the, everything from all the polls I've seen, even the likes of Newsom and a bunch of other people have a tough time against Trump. But it is, if this was Nikki Haley, I don't think people would be freaking out as much as far as trying to gaslight everybody, because I think they would think, yeah, he's got to go. Because if this was your mother or father, you'd have taken the keys away.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of us have faced similar decisions either with our parents or with our grandparents. A lot of Americans have firsthand experience with an aging parent who can't do things the way they used to. You don't want them to drive. You don't want them to, operate heavy machinery. You want them to be careful on stairs, all kinds of stuff. And Joe Biden is at the age where most people are, playing shuffleboard and enjoying the early bird special at Denny's, not, sitting behind the resolute desk in the Oval Office and being commander in chief. And I think you put your finger on it, that like when you've spent 3.5 years arguing that the reelection of Donald Trump would be the end of democracy as we know it, and would be this absolute disaster. And listeners of the podcast know I am not a fan of Donald Trump. I got a lot of problems with this guy. I think it's the idea that at some point he's going to force a constitutional crisis if he ends up being reelected. Yeah, that could happen. But that doesn't automatically mean that this, means Joe Biden gets a pass for everything he does. And he just pooped the bed. And it's, he's senile. There's really no two ways about it after that debate performance. And there seems to be this, Joe Biden is, the argument from Democrats now is that Donald Trump is so bad that, as my colleague Michael Brennan Doherty put it, you have to reelect the corpse. It's that important.
It's scary. It is scary. It is absolutely scary in this situation. When you would think about this, this is the best that we can do. No, this isn't the best we can do. This is the best of the people who want that job with that kind of ego. That's the reality. The best we can do doesn't want any part of this. I think we can all agree on that. All right, let's move on to the mostly kind of good. Supreme Court came out today, not a shocker, 6-3 decision, said, yeah, the president's got some immunity, but it's not blanket immunity while he's president.
Yeah, and this makes sense to me. For further analysis, I'd say look to my colleague Andy McCarthy, also Dan McLaughlin. there are a lot of people who know more about the law, the Constitution, and the Supreme Court than I do. But everything in this 6-3 ruling makes sense to me, that the president should not be prosecuted for anything involving their official duties. You can't have a president second guessing themselves, saying, well, if I make this decision, is someone going to go to sue me after I leave office? But presidential immunity does not extend to everything the president does in all circumstances. As I think, I think it's safe to say that Trump and his lawyers really, like it wouldn't apply to taking documents to Mar-a-Lago. It wouldn't apply to business payments to Michael Cohen before he became president, things like that. But, for some of the January 6th stuff, it may, and I think it's very clear this is going to delay Trump's trial until after the election. I know you're going to see more people trying to say, this is a sign of a crazy right-wing court, et cetera, et cetera. But I think...
It's rogue, Jim. It's rogue.
Exactly. It's rogue. Never mind the fact that it's following its duties under the Constitution, I don't think, and again, John Roberts is not a, rabid pit bull frothing at the mouth who's always looking, how can I help Trump today? So I think this is a common sense decision. I don't think it may not be exactly what the Trump administration wanted. It may or the Trump team wanted. It certainly wasn't what the Democrats wanted to see. But I think it makes sense. I think that that when you're doing stuff in your official capacity as president, you can't be sued over that. If you are committing criminal acts outside of that, well then heck no, you're fair game for prosecutors. And that is what has happened. We'll see if this we'll see how the public digests this. And the other thing I kind of wonder is whether you're going to hear a lot of Democrats talking about this because they don't want to talk about President Biden anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, God, yeah, of course. Anything to take their eyes off the prize. And the prize right now is he needs to go. And everybody's like, look over here. You know what's interesting about this ruling is they kicked it down to the lower courts, Jim, and they basically said, look, presidents have absolute immunity when discharging their presidential duties. On the personal side or presidential side of this kind of thing here with the January 6th / DC case, that's going to be for you guys to decide which was personal and which was presidential.
Yeah, and some of this might be in a bit of a blurry gray area. But if you want to look at the application of this kind of concept in a different context, I think it's very fair to ask questions about the drone striking of Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and other terrorist targets during the Obama years. By the way, I'm very pro drone striking, terrorists. However, there was one guy who was a U.S. citizen. And he got, drone strike and killed. And there were some people who said, well, the U.S. government is executing this guy without a trial, without anything like that. And I think that you can say, that is a bit of a thornier moral question than your typical drone strike. Because if you're an American citizen, shouldn't you have some rights? On the other hand, this guy was an SOB and he had it coming. But so you can have these somewhat interesting, but I don't think you could sue Barack Obama for launching drone strikes against terrorist targets. I just think that's kind of absurd. And I think that's, any reasonable court would toss that out and say this is fully within his rights, powers, and duties as commander in chief. And, somebody else doesn't get to come along and sue them. So I think we got to give the president in their official duties a really wide latitude. And if you don't like it, well, there's the impeachment is the appropriate remedy for that. For stuff that doesn't relate to the official duties, it's fair game. And that seems like the right call based on what we know now.
We move on from there to the thing that is not shocking, and I've been saying it for several months now, and this is the crazy. Jill Biden is the number one reason why we still have Joe Biden running. And this whole thing in Vogue and what, you sent me is today, everything you need to know about how much she enjoys the lifestyle and the power and the accoutrements, as I'd like to say, that comes with it, says a lot.
Yeah, because look, the debate performance was very bad. Watching Jill Biden have to help Joe Biden step down from a 4-inch, 5-inch step off the stage was not helpful. Watching afterwards where she said, Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. Like he was a preschooler who had just gone potty the right way. Like none of that is, all of that makes her look like the president's caretaker and not the first lady and not a guy who's capable of handling his duties. So then she comes out, and of course, Vogue, apparently did this photo shoot a while ago, but like it comes out this morning. The cover image is it looks like something out of the Hunger Games. And then the headline, the First Lady Jill Biden, the quote is, "We will decide our future." Oh my God, that sounds terrible. That sounds like Joe and I will decide the nation's future. But what's more is you read the editor, the article that goes with it. It's a typical gushing profile, but it was almost negative. Because it begins, quote, "If you want to know what power feels like, try to get yourself driven around in a motorcade. Flashing police chaperone lights form a perimeter as you blaze down an empty highway, waiting cars backed up on entry ramps as you pass. It's as if the world is holding its breath for you. Also, rules don't apply. On a cool spring day, driving down suburban Minneapolis side streets, we run red lights and whip around curves so fast I can barely take in the commonplace American view." End quote. It's just a description of the Vogue reporter in the First Lady's motorcade zipping around. But just, if you want to know what power feels like, that's a terrible way to begin this. And it's almost communicating, Jill Biden loves the position she's in. She loves the power. She loves the prestige. She loves being treated like a big deal. And she's going to be damned if she's going to give this up. And that's not the message that the Democrats want anybody to hear right now. That's not anything the Bidens want to. The idea also is that the Biden family had their meeting yesterday. Lo and behold, Jill Biden and Hunter Biden did not want Joe Biden to quit. Chad, do you know what Hunter Biden actually said when Joe Biden articulated the difficult question before him?
No.
He said, "Pardon me?"
Which is what he needs to do. Let's be real, Joe. You need to do the best thing for the country, and you need to step away. And as you step away, you pardon your kid because it's your kid. Nobody's going to fault you for it. It's just time to move on. You are too old, and it is past. But I'm telling you, the Jill Biden world is, and I've been talking about it for months, she lives and loves the power. She loves the stuff. And the fact that she would say, "We'll decide what's best," you're not elected.
Yeah.
Right? Just like Hunter's not running, neither are you. And that's a scary thought because I go back this over and over again. Who's really running everything from, let's say, 11 till 4, maybe him, from 4 till the next day? Who?
Yeah, the fact that one of the spins and defensive statements that was put out by this is that Biden is really good from 10 to 4. Well, first of all, that's fewer hours than the typical American works, right? That's not even banker's hours. Somebody said that's the hipster cupcake place hours.
Yeah.
In the gentrified neighborhood, only works from 10 to 4. But secondly, the president, look, you're going to have 3 a.m. phone calls. The presidency is a 24-hour job. It's really tough, even for a much younger, much healthier man. And Joe Biden is, going to be 82 shortly after the election. And if he were to serve a full term, which nobody thinks he's going to be able to do, he'd be 86. It's just absurd. And the only thing you needed to see this coming was a calendar. And yet somehow the entire Democratic Party has kind of marched in lockstep up until Thursday night, believing, no, it's going to be fine. Well, it's not fine. And this is where they are.
And you can't gaslight everybody anymore. You can't hide it. And who always wins? Nature. And nature said, You're on borrowed time.
Yep. Anyway, so Chad, you have come in for what probably is going to be a short but very exciting week, and I can almost hardly wait to see what tomorrow brings.
I'm excited. That's Jim Garrity. I'm Chad Benson. You can follow me at Chad Benson Show. People want to get the morning jolt and everything. Where do they go, Jim?
NationalReview.com. I'm also on Twitter, X, as Elon would prefer us to call it, at Jim Garrity, and I still write columns for the Washington Post as well.
Right on. Always good to talk to you, brother. We'll do it again soon, like tomorrow.